My name is Jacob Stoops, and you're listening to the Page 2 Podcast, my podcast about the reality of being an SEO, in which I chronicle the real-life stories, experiences, challenges, and advice from some of the most amazing people in the industry. Today we talk with Jenny Halasz, president and founder of JLH Marketing. We discuss her 20 years of experience in the SEO industry, how she went from being a communications major with the hopes of going into broadcasting to a marketing major while at NC State University, and how that eventually led her to a career in SEO. We talk about her experiences as an affiliate marketing manager for what eventually became Art.com, her rise to become VP of Search Strategy at Acronym, and her transition into owning her own business. And potentially even more importantly, we discuss what it's like to lose your job, as well as how to pick yourself up and dust yourself off. On top of this, we even talk a little bit of SEO. Crazy, right? So get your popcorn ready as we tell Jenny's SEO story. So, hello everybody. I am here with Jenny Halasz. Did I pronounce that right? Halasz. I even asked you before and I still pronounced it wrong. So, good for me. President and founder of JLH Marketing. How are you doing, Jenny?
I'm doing great, Jacob. How are you?
I'm great. We were talking just before this. I have been bouncing around the Raleigh SEO community, and I will say it's like you said, because everybody is just so nice, and so far nobody has turned me down in terms of just being willing to talk and have a conversation. And I am really excited to talk to you because I think you're one of the really awesome women in the industry right now, and you have a ton of SEO experience. You've been doing it for a long time, so really excited to chat with you.
Thanks. Wow, you build me up so much. I hope I can measure up.
Right. I did my homework. You've been doing this thing for almost 20 years, so I think that there's a lot that my listeners can learn from you. So,
well, I hope so.
Tell us about your background.
Where do you want me to start?
Start at the beginning, I guess. How did you get into this weird thing called SEO?
Completely by accident, like so many people. I guess the short version of my story is I went to college at NC State University, graduated from there. And when I graduated in 2000, there were no jobs. The bubble had burst and there just was not much of anything out there. So I had gone to school originally for communications and thought I was going to do broadcasting. I had intended to go into TV, and that goes all the way back to when I was much younger. I did musical theater and had always hoped to, kind of my childhood dream was to move to New York and be a star on Broadway.
Wow.
That wasn't a real realistic dream. So by the time I got to college, I had kind of settled on, well, maybe I can do some broadcasting. I'm interested in news. But my very first class in broadcasting was a 4-hour lab where we had to create and produce our own show in the school in the school lab in the school broadcasting studio.
Yep.
And I was terrible. I was really terrible at it. And I realized that I actually didn't even really like it that much. So I switched majors.
Okay.
And I built my own major, which was a combination of advertising and mass communications.
Okay.
I had envisioned at that point that maybe I would go and be an account executive for some advertising firm, or do copywriting or something like that. I always liked writing, and I even did some editing for our school newspaper, The Technician, and that just didn't pan out either, because when I graduated, nobody wanted an account executive because everybody was cutting their marketing budgets. So I sort of took the first job offer that I got that paid anything. And it was with this little company based right here in Raleigh called allwall.com. And they were selling posters to basically college students, but they were doing it online. And so that was 2000. It was pretty groundbreaking at that point. And started working there. They hired me to manage their affiliate program. My first title was affiliate program manager, but really all I did was help answer the phone and answer emails, like glorified customer service rep. But during that time, I had to kind of teach myself how to write some HTML, just really basic, like links, and help affiliates troubleshoot things that went wrong. And this was really back in the days of the 10 blue links. I mean, there wasn't a lot of multimedia or anything like that. Nobody was using CSS, you know.
A much simpler time.
Very, very simplistic. But I actually, when I got hired for the job, they said part of the requirement for this job is that you know some basic HTML. And I said, yeah, sure I do. I learned it in school. In truth, I had actually, I probably shouldn't even say this, but I had actually paid somebody to help me make a website so I could pass one of my classes. So I didn't know anything at all. So I went to Barnes & Noble, because we still had bookstores back then, and bought the O'Reilly book on HTML and consumed it in a weekend.
That is so much like my story, and I went to the exact same place. Oh my God. Yeah. That's
so I consumed that in a weekend and showed up on Monday and was like, yeah, I know how to write. I know how to code a link.
Yeah, I was so a couple of things. One, that is so eerily similar to my own story. Like I worked out of college, I worked at UPS, which is an awful
that's a
job.
Horrible job. My brother did that for a while.
Yeah. So I worked there, and
you get really ripped, but man, it's awful.
I can attest. My body was shaped a lot differently back then. But anyways, yeah.
Weren't we all?
Tell you, I'm a supervisor there. You just get shit on from literally the moment you put on that green shirt, and they're like, by everybody, including your bosses. And I finally got to my breaking point. I've never done this in any job ever. Never quit a job. Never been fired from a job. I walked in without any notice and quit on the spot without a backup job. So I luckily had some friends that got me a couple of jobs. So I worked 2 jobs, 7 days a week for like 8 or 9 months. And eventually I got like burned out on those jobs. And I had another friend who got me in at his company, and they did cold calling to fill events, which is basically telemarketing. And on the other side, they did local search marketing, which was such a weird business, but I had no experience in either. So they put me on the cold calling side. And just like you, I was so awful. Like I was so bad. There were a couple of times where like I would cold call people and they would start yelling at me, and I'd get so flustered that I would hang up on them instead of the opposite. It took about 2 weeks for that to like work itself out. And eventually they just decided like, hey, my friend came and talked to me and said, hey, like, we're going to bring you over to my side of the business, which is the marketing side. And if you can learn how to build websites, which I never had done ever in my life, but I had come from a graphic design background, but if you can learn how to build websites, you can stay. Otherwise, you're going to have to go. So literally, just like you, the probably that evening, I can't remember exactly the sequence of events, but I remember very clearly walking into Barnes and Noble, which is very ironic that you pick up a book to learn digital, and picking up Head Start HTML and CSS for Beginners, read it cover to cover in like 4 days, and came in the next week and started building websites on WordPress, and the rest is history. That's insane.
That's so funny.
Yeah. And then the other thing that you mentioned is, so broadcasting and news. So we've had 2 or 3 people that I've interviewed that come from journalism backgrounds. And I just wonder what it is about journalism that ultimately, well, first off, it's that when people get out of college, they can't find jobs actually in journalism. But then I just wonder what eventually steers them to a career in SEO. I just find that ironically like a career path that most people start on before they get into SEO, which is so weird. So,
well, I was kind of always customer service. Like I've always been able to talk to people and help them resolve problems. And my very first job was as a cashier at Office Max, and then I worked customer service for Sears, and that was a horrible job. And for a bike shop, selling like really high-end bicycles. So the affiliate marketing thing, and essentially just helping people was a natural progression. But when I got laid off from there, I was looking for really probably anything that I could find, because at that point I had just got married and bought my first house.
Wow.
And then I got laid off like a few days later. It wasn't that close. I think it was like 3 months, but it was. Man.
That's a tough way to start.
Yeah, that was not good.
I guess I quantify, like, I don't know, when you get like when you hit those big life events, it's like, okay, I'm an adult now, real life has started, and that's a tough way to get out of the gates, man.
It's freaky. But it seems to be my MO. As I continue, you'll see that like I always lose jobs at the worst possible time. So yeah, I got laid off from that job. Although while I was there, they did buy the domain and the rights to art.com. And so now they're a huge company.
Yeah.
So that was a really fun experience, going from like 12 of us in little offices in Raleigh to a huge warehouse and like 200 people in RTP. It was crazy. But yeah, so they decided to outsource their affiliate program to Linkshare, and I lost my job.
Yeah.
So I saw a sales position for a company called WebSourced that had just rebranded from a company called Keyword Ranking. And went in and interviewed for the job, and it was Andy Beal. Do you know Andy Beal?
Yeah, I've heard of him. Never met him, but I've heard of him. Yeah.
Who interviewed me for the job. And he said, "It's been really nice talking to you, and I, hope to see you again sometime, but you are not going to be what we're looking for sales."
Okay.
I said, okay, yeah, because I knew I probably sucked at sales, but I just needed a damn job.
Yeah.
Excuse my language. And when I got home from that interview, there was a message on my phone, and it was from Andy. And he said, after you left, I got to thinking, and I went in and I talked with our CEO, and we might have a job for you after all. Would you come back in tomorrow?
Good for him.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I went back in, and he said, look, we're trying this new thing where for the sites so they were selling banner advertisements on a site called World Mall. And so you would buy a spot in the mall, and you could put your banner up. It was like, it was something crazy, like $500 a month or something.
You're right.
And they said, the banner thing's not really working all that great anymore. This was 2002. And we're trying this new thing called SEO. Have you heard of it? No, I have no idea what you're talking about. He said, basically, we just write these tags. They're called meta tags. So a title and a description for every page on a customer's website. Oh, okay, that sounds good. And they said, so with your customer service background, what we'd really like for you to do is answer the phone when these people call and ask us to stop charging their card, and try to convince them to buy this meta tag service instead.
Wow. That just sounds stressful.
And I took the job, and that's what I did. And for about the first year, that's what we did. They hired 3 more people, and all 4 of us answered the phone and talked people into buying this other service. And then it was more of an account management role as we kind of converted all the customers over.
Wow.
About a year into it, I had made really good friends with these 2 guys that worked there, Ben Wills and Garrett French. And about a year into it, they took me aside again, and I thought, oh God, I'm about to get fired, and they, can you come into the office? And, oh, okay. And so I go into the office, and they said, listen, the account management role is just not working out for you anymore. And I said, okay. And they said, you're just giving away too much information to the customers that they haven't paid for, so we're going to move you over to the SEO team.
Wow. Okay.
That's how it started.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so, I learned from some of the absolute best, Ben Wills and Garrett French. And we, again, grew that company from like 20 people to over 200.
Wow.
And then one day, the SEC showed up.
Really?
Securities and Exchange Commission.
Oh my God.
And told us all to go home and took our computers.
That is insane. Scary. What did they think was happening?
There was apparently some securities fraud, some insider trading going on in our senior level.
Wow.
And I'm really oversimplifying the situation, but essentially the company lasted about a year after that. Well, so we came back in, we worked for a couple more weeks, and then like 40 or 50 of us got an email one afternoon that said, come to the cafeteria at 3 p.m.
Oh my God.
And we went in, and they said, we're eliminating all of your jobs.
What was that like?
Awful. Absolutely awful. I've never seen,
wow.
Everybody was crying. Everybody was walking around packing up boxes. We all ended up going over to the bar across the street. We called it, everybody who worked there still calls it Black Thursday, because it was just a day where everything exploded. So it was it was a little over half the staff got let go that day.
In all of that was tied probably to the activity of the people above you that you had nothing to do with.
Most likely.
That is unfortunate, man.
But so I was in that first round of layoffs. They had, I don't even know, like 3 or 4 more rounds of layoffs, and then the company finally just closed his stores.
That is like my worst nightmare, to just walk in one day and the doors are shuttered, or you just get blindsided.
I know, right?
It's literally like one of my, it keeps me up at night nightmares. I can't even imagine.
When the Securities and Exchange Commission showed up that afternoon, we were all just like,
yeah,
what on earth is going on here? This is crazy.
God. Yeah.
Well, I knew I hadn't done anything, and pretty much, none of the other employees had either, but something at the top.
Yeah. Well, I hate to say it, but as a Browns fan, when that actually happened to the
You're a Browns fan?
I'm from Ohio. Yeah. So I'm a huge Browns fan. So
my husband's from Cleveland.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Yes.
I spent a whole week in Cleveland last week. With the fine folks from Search Discovery. We've got a Cleveland office there. And I grew up a Browns fan in Ohio. So we're familiar with SEC and FBI raids because we were our owner like 5 or 6 years ago. So
yeah, you would be.
Yeah. Anyways, so after that happened, where did you go next?
After that happened, I found out I was pregnant with my first child.
Oh my God. Good Lord. Well, you win the timing award.
Like I said.
Man.
Always with me. I don't know why. But yes, I was pregnant with my first child. And without a job.
Wow. That's insane. The only thing I can think of that even parallels that, my wife, her parents worked at, so my wife is a triplet. Her parents worked at the same place, which is I guess in hindsight, in terms of balancing your risk, and they both got let
impressive.
Yeah, they were right. They were let go from the same company at the same time with young triplets. Oh
no.
Yeah, so it's similar. Never good. I can't even imagine. So, whew. Hope I never have to do that.
Oh man, it was crazy.
All right.
So yeah.
So you're
panic
pregnant,
ensued.
No job, panic ensuing.
Where
do you go next?
Interviewed everywhere I could think of.
Wow.
Trying to find anybody who wanted somebody who knew SEO, or I found a lot of people were actually looking for somebody who knew analytics.
Okay.
And at that point, I knew quite a bit about analytics. That was pre-Google Analytics, but let's see. So when was that? That was 2006. Mm-hmm. So that was before Google Analytics, but I knew Yahoo Analytics really well.
Wow.
And Web Trends was also really the big one back then.
Yeah.
So I found a job working for BB&T.
Okay.
And I accepted the job to go and work for BB&T in the analytics department. And I was supposed to start the next week. Mm-hmm. And my phone started ringing from this company in New York City. This agency called Acronym.
Yep.
And they kept calling. A person would call and they would ask me a bunch of SEO questions, and they would say, have you ever considered moving to New York? And I'd say, no, I really haven't.
Yeah.
I live in Raleigh, North Carolina. I own a home here. I
completely
have a husband. My family is here. Not saying the thing that was really true, which is I'm about to have a baby. Yeah. They just, it was so unusual because these people, different people from this company, would call me and ask a whole bunch of SEO questions. And I would say, well, thank you very much for your time, but I'm not moving to New York. Like, you're not going to convince me of this. Finally, the last call comes from the CEO of the company, Anton Konikov. And he says, I'd really like you just to come up to New York and see what we're about.
Yep.
And I said, well, but I mean, I'm not moving to New York. and he said, well, that's okay. Just consider it a free trip to New York. I just want to meet you. Come on up and talk to us.
That's awesome.
And so I did.
Yeah.
I went up to New York, and it was St. Patrick's Day, and it was absolutely insane in the city. But I found the office, was and still is in the Empire State Building. And I interviewed with a bunch of different people while I was there. They took me out to lunch. We had a nice, chat. And then Anton called me into his office and offered me a job. And I said, I really appreciate the offer, but I cannot move here. And he said, that's okay. You can work from Raleigh.
Wow. And that's before like remote work was like a thing. Yeah.
Nobody from their company had ever worked remotely before. And it was just not a thing back then.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking to myself, that offer he just gave me is probably a good 20% above what I was making at my last job. Mm-hmm. And I'd get to work from home, and I'm pregnant. And so I said, well, I got to talk to my husband about it, but let me go back to Raleigh and talk to him. And, I feel good about this. I think I'm going to accept.
Let me ask you, do you believe in fate? Like, I feel like somebody just kept like tapping you on the shoulder and tapping you on the shoulder until you finally figured out, like, maybe this is my fate.
I do. I kind of do believe in fate. And I mean, the job, by the way, was to rebuild their SEO department. Yeah, they awesome. Had a couple of people that were working for them that were, kind of younger people that weren't really taking it seriously. Yeah. And they were doing okay work, but they wanted to take it to another level. And they'd heard about WebSourced, and they'd gotten really good recommendations for me from people like Andy and Ben and others. Yep. So I ended up taking the job, and I got up Monday morning and went into BB&T and met the person I was supposed to be working for, and shook his hand, and he said, okay, well, let's get you your, employee badge and blah, blah, blah. And he's getting ready to onboard me. And I said, do you have somewhere we could talk for a minute first? And I went into his office, and I told him, I said, I am really, really sorry, because I know you've invested a lot of effort in me, but I'm not going to be able to take the job. And he looked completely crushed, and a little pissed off too.
Sure, yeah.
And he said, what is it about the other job that appeals to you so much? And I said, well, I just found out I'm pregnant. Mm-hmm. And this job allows me to work from home. Yeah. And his face broke into the biggest grin I've ever seen. And he reached across the table and shook my hand, and he was like, well, thank you so much. It really took a lot of guts to come in here and tell us in person. And,
that's awesome.
After you have the baby and you get settled and everything, just let us know if you ever need a job.
That is awesome.
And I know he's thinking, as soon as I walk out, whew, dodged a bullet there, right?
Right. Wow. Crazy. Yeah.
So I took the job with Acronym, and about the time I started to show, I said, I'm pregnant.
Yeah.
And they said, how far along are you? And I said, about 3 months.
Okay.
And they said, okay. And you could see them doing the math in their heads, like,
how long is she going to be out for?
no, it was she was pregnant when we
Oh, yeah,
her.
there was that, yeah. Yep. You can always play it off like, I didn't know. It was early.
Crazy.
Yeah. So
they were a great company to work for. I really enjoyed working for them. The team was awesome. I got to meet and work with some of the most amazing people. Another person you should try to interview if you get a chance is Ellen Mamedov, who is heading up the digital team over at IBM now.
Okay. Wow.
She worked at Acronym.
Wow. Yeah, I ran across Acronym. So I used to work at Rosetta, and we leveraged, not because I liked it, but because it's just what was there and what everybody used when I got there, a tool called Bright Edge. We had more than a few calls with Acronym in which they were wanting us to, and I don't think you were there at the time, because I think you left Acronym, according to my research, in 2011, and I started in 2011. So I think this had to have been 2012, maybe 2013, trying to convince us to switch over to from Bright Edge. And they were my choice because I hate Bright Edge and hated Bright Edge at the time. I probably would have, but it was never my call to make. But we almost ran across each other when you were.
That's funny, yeah.
Almost. We just missed each other. So you worked your way up at Acronym to VP. What was that like?
A lot of hard work. It was just amazing experience. Selena Agarwal, now what's her married name? Isaac, I think. She was my boss for that whole time, and became the COO at one point. I don't think she's there anymore. We haven't kept in contact, but she's just a really brilliant woman, and I learned a ton from her. And there were just some really great people there. I had been so fortunate to work for WebSourced because there were so many huge names that came through there. Heather Lloyd Martin and Mike Green and Garrett French, so many people. And so when Mike Green came to Acronym, that was really when he really advocated for me. He really did great. It really helped me. Helped me get my first speaking gig and all that kind of thing. So just really great guy. So
let me ask you this: what made you leave Acronym?
Oh my goodness. Well, I was really interested in speaking and writing, being an industry advocate. And so I was doing more and more of that. And really looking back on it, hindsight being what it is, I wasn't a great employee. I was, kind of difficult to work with at times.
How so?
I'm very exacting. And to be completely frank, I don't know if you have come across, I'm a pretty big advocate for mental health awareness. So it would be really wrong of me not to say at this point, I was suffering from some pretty severe anxiety.
Sure.
And it was coming out in me being angry and combative. I think I was probably a really difficult person to work with back then. And
what do you,
you know, it was getting difficult. There were a number of personal relationships at the company that were causing challenges for kind of the whole team. And I think I was, I hadn't really managed a lot of people before that point. And when I became VP, I managed the paid team, the SEO team, and the account management team. I had about 40 people reporting to me. And that's a lot. It is a ton. So I think in some ways that situation was set up for failure. But in some ways I just was not up to the task. So, you know, we have to accept the things that we're not the best at.
In retrospect, do you think that there was anything that you would have told yourself to do differently there, or anything that you learned for people that, and I'm only thinking for people, there are people out there that are in that kind of a situation, maybe not to the same extent right now. And I think one of the good things about this podcast is I honestly, I do like talking about mental health, because I think it's incredibly important, because there is a lot of anxiety, a lot of imposter syndrome, a lot of pressure that gets put on SEOs because it's a performance-based job.
Absolutely. And always on. I mean,
always on. You've got to be on. You know, you're 20 years in the industry. I'm 13 going on 14 years in the industry. And it's just the same as the day I started. You're only as good as how you've performed on your last account, right? Even deep into your career, which can be stressful. So is there any advice that you would give, having gone through that, to people that may be going through it right now?
Well, a couple of things. I mean, I definitely should have sought help for my anxiety way sooner than I did. It got really out of control. My work environment, for a number of reasons, became toxic. And when you recognize that happening, you just have to step back and say, first, is this worth it? Is this something that I want to try and salvage? And secondly, you know, what is my part in this? Because I think that we have a tendency as humans to blame others for our mistakes and for our interpersonal conflicts, and have to step back and say, okay, what is it about me that's causing this? Because ultimately that's the only thing you can change is yourself. And then if you're in a situation, whether you've got that going on or not, but where you're expected to manage that many people, go and talk to two major people about that. So first, talk to a business coach. I had the wonderful good fortune while I was at Acronym to work with JT O'Donnell, who is a huge name in the coaching world now, but at that time I think she was kind of just starting out. Not just starting out, but certainly not as famous as she is now. And she's phenomenal. So finding somebody who's really going to force you to look at that, you know, kind of SWOT analysis of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats within your own capabilities is really important. And then the other person you have to talk to is your boss. Whoever you're reporting to, you have to say, look, this is not working. We have to build in some kind of safeguards or structures that allow me to continue to be productive. Because one of the things that I began to really resent about the job was that I wasn't doing SEO anymore. I was managing people and budgets and time cards and Operations, exactly. And I wasn't doing SEO anymore, and I missed it.
Yeah.
I love SEO.
Yeah.
And so, fate being what it is, I was due to speak at SMX West, and I went up to New York for one of my regular trips, and I sat down with Anton and Selena like I normally did, and they said, "Look, we need to make some changes." And I had seen it coming. I knew it. And they said, we'd love for you to remain on board as like a subject matter expert and go out and speak and write and, really be like our advocate in the industry. But we want you to stop working on client accounts. We want to separate you from the rest of the team, basically. And we need you to take a pay cut because we'll be paying for your travel.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a hard pill to swallow.
Very hard.
Yeah.
Very hard. And, actually your podcast is the first time I've talked publicly about it.
Wow.
So you're getting an exclusive here.
Well, I honestly, I really appreciate it. And again, like this podcast, this is about getting these types of topics out there.
Yeah.
Aside from like, I love SEO too. So I love talking about the work, but like this stuff is just as important because like people forget everybody's got something going on. Everybody. There's nobody that you walk past in the supermarket or nobody that you work with or whatever that doesn't have something going on that's affecting them. But the only way you would know is if people talk about it. And I'm hoping that when people listen, in addition to kind of the subject matter expertise, that they listen for this stuff as well and know that they're not alone. They're not the only ones going through this. And hopefully we can give advice to help people feel at least a little bit better about whatever they're going through. And it's not just the SEO profession, although this type of stuff is pervasive in the SEO profession. It's other professions as well. So I think this, for me, I'm really happy that you felt, compelled and open enough to share. So for me, that's awesome. I appreciate it.
Thanks. And I mean, I'm sitting here thinking, what did I just say on live audio? But I definitely want to say, like, Acronym was amazing to me.
Yeah.
I bear absolutely no ill will toward them or any of it. They made the right decision for their business, and they were great to me. I mean, they even gave me like extra maternity leave for both of my kids, just so that I could make it happen. They helped me pay for a nanny so that I could come back to work right away. I only took 6 weeks off with both my kids. So,
wow.
But of course, being able to work from home made that possible.
Yeah.
And then they helped me. Well, I mean, they didn't actually pay for my nanny, but they just, helped me help me in terms of paid leave and just things that they really didn't have to do, because as the company of their size, they're not subject to FMLA. So they just did it to be nice, and I really appreciate it.
That's awesome.
But so that was all happening, and I went to SMX West, and I met one of my absolute heroes, Vanessa Fox.
Okay.
And she was so kind, and we had a really nice chat. And we were sitting in the speaker room, and she was talking to another search person who's of equal status. And she was talking about how it's really hard to find good help. At that time, she had her company 9 by Blue, which was a consulting agency. And she was talking about how it's just really hard to find people who really know their stuff and will do the work.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there at the table and I said, well, let me know if you ever need a scrappy SEO from North Carolina, like just as a joke, kind of. And she called me the next week and she said, I'm going to be in Raleigh for a client meeting and I'd love to meet you and talk to you.
It's amazing. If you had not been at SMX West, you never probably would have talked to her. You may have talked to her later, but not in the same 2 weeks.
Not the same way.
Going to be in Raleigh. Funny how that works out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she came to Raleigh and we chatted and she offered me a job.
Wow. That's awesome.
And so I got to work remotely with her team in Seattle. And I got to work with some really amazing clients that I cannot say names of to my deathbed.
Right.
But
I know how that is.
Vanessa is, well, first, she's absolutely brilliant. And she pioneered incredible things. And if anybody has not read her book, Marketing in the Age of Google, you should read it. It's really excellent. I think it's now in like its 4th edition.
Wow.
But it's really excellent because it talks about intent and really mapping keywords to intent to behavior. Really, really good stuff. And it's short too. You can read it, in a couple hours. But unbeknownst to me, she was talking to RKG about some technology that she was building. And she came to me about 9 months in and said, hey, so I'm shutting down the consulting part of the company and focusing purely on tool development. But I have contracts that I need to work out. Need to finish out. Would you be interested in staying on contract to work on these? And she said, I can't guarantee you 40 hours a week. It'll be that at first, but it's going to trail off because I'm not signing new contracts. And I said, okay, this is fine. Can I try to get my own clients? And she said, of course, that's fine. As long as you don't use company resources or equipment, that's totally fine. And so my mother's an attorney, a contracts attorney. So when I told her I was thinking about doing this, she said, okay, you need to incorporate. What's your business name? I'm like, JLH Marketing, I guess. So hence my completely uncreative business name.
I was going to ask.
It just worked out. By the time the work from Vanessa dried up, I had enough of my own and just stuck with it.
What is it? Do you have do you have a staff, or is it still just you, or what is it like to go from being in very corporate environments to being more entrepreneurial and running your own company?
I love it. I absolutely love it. It's just me.
Okay.
I don't. I outsource things occasionally. A little bit here, a little bit there. I've had a couple of really fantastic contractors and a couple of really terrible contractors. But for the most part, it's just me. And I love it because I really get to get into the consulting part of the business. I get to really help people. But I never expected to be an entrepreneur. Like, I never thought that was me. And I was kind of forced into it again.
It was a sink or swim, and it sounds like you're swimming.
Yeah. I am swimming. It's been this September. It'll be 8 years.
8 years. Wow, that's awesome. What are some, I guess, the unforeseen challenges that you run up against being kind of a one-person consultancy and running your business that, like, you never had to deal with in any of these other places?
I mean, all the operations stuff, right? Taxes and billing and contracts, and I got sued once.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I should probably say, for anybody who's listening, I didn't do anything wrong. I just
Right.
was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Somebody didn't want to pay their bill. Yeah, and ended up not paying their bill. So I would say, that's certainly a real life lesson for you. If you're an entrepreneur and get your invoices out on time, do not let them build up. Stop work if people don't pay.
Yeah.
No matter how nice they are, no matter how much you are sure they're good for it, do not keep working if they're not paying, because it builds up so fast. And then the other one is, don't ever send a collections agency after somebody, because they will turn around and sue you. Wow.
I never even see, and that's exactly why I feel like I've had an opportunity and have considered going out on my own and taking on clients. And there have been opportunities internally at some of the companies I've worked at to be more on the operations side. And I just have no passion for any of that.
It's a huge pain. And I mean, my husband and I both own our own companies.
Wow.
So,
well, at least you got somebody.
Like, around tax time, you just don't even want to be anywhere near either one of us.
I'm sure. My father-in-law owns his own companies, and his taxes are for, like, he's a small business owner. They're incredibly complex. So we have an accountant. Like, we hire an accountant to do our taxes, but especially because with 2 solo earners, our family taxes are ridiculously complicated. Yeah.
But even just trying to get everything together, making sure QuickBooks is up to date, answering any questions, figuring out all your expenses, like, all of that is just, it's exhausting. It can be exhausting.
I can imagine.
Know that that's what you're getting into if you are planning to start your own business. You really will only bill about 50% of your time.
Wow.
The other 50% will be spent on operations and marketing.
Crazy. So I want to be like, do you still have time? Are we good if we go over a little bit?
No,
okay.
we're good.
So I want to back out of the kind of story, and I want to talk a little bit about the industry. I think aside from the Raleigh SEO community, I think one of the places that I've seen you crop up in the industry discussions has been around the level of, I guess, discourse and behavior, especially at conferences, which I'm not a fan of conferences myself. But so I guess, and I'm sure you've got a lot to say about that. What would you say about the state of the industry with respect to how people treat each other and behavior at conferences?
That's a complicated question.
Right.
So aside from being a big advocate for mental health, I'm also a huge advocate for women in search, women in tech, women in STEM. It's an uphill battle.
Yep.
When I first started in the industry in really, I guess technically we're going to say probably 2002, it was really hard to be a woman in the room, because I was the only woman in the room a lot of the time. And it was really tough to go into a pitch meeting and, be the person who is supposed to be the subject matter expert, and the, CEO of the company says, honey, are you taking notes?
Wow, that's bold.
It wasn't then, though. That's the thing. So much has changed.
Yeah.
So much has changed for the better. And while I experienced that kind of misogyny in pitch meetings and working with companies from their in-house C-level and staff, the men in the industry, for the most part, are amazing. There are so many guys in this industry that are just the sweetest people, who would do anything for you, who are really respectful and appreciative of women and the perspective that we bring to the industry. And a lot of them have helped me along the way. So it gets really difficult when we start talking about things like harassment at conferences and that sort of thing, because a lot of it is from the attendees as opposed to from the other SEOs. And some of it from conference organizers, although many of them are no longer in the business. Some of the ones that were the worst. But it's been interesting. I've been called the token woman on the panel a few times, which is really insulting.
It's incredibly.
Because, I don't ever want to be chosen for a panel or for a job because I'm a woman. I want to be chosen because I'm the best, or at least as good as.
Yeah. Yes.
So that's definitely a challenge that we have. But I think for the most part, the industry's really gotten a lot better, and the awareness is really there a lot more than it used to be.
Yeah, and I hope that it continues to I can't see it, going anywhere but continuing to get better as we get kind of farther and farther away from the era and attitude that type of relationship or those types of gender roles are like considered normal in society. But like, I think it all comes down to it. I feel bad. I feel bad as a man that other men are acting like this. And there are some times where I'm like, I just don't know what I can do other than to like govern myself and be respectful and treat people like they deserve to be treated. But then I think that a certain component of it, like speaking up, like this.
Yeah. Can I tell you the best thing you can do?
Sure, please.
Is speak up when you hear it or when you see it. When you're, out at a bar with a bunch of guys and they start talking about, so-and-so's rack on stage today, just speak up and say like, that's our colleague. That's not okay.
Yeah. And, and the crazy thing is, save for like a few times, and honestly, I'm a little ashamed that I didn't speak up. I don't say anything, but I didn't speak up. Honestly, I've never actually seen or heard or had somebody come to me and say, hey, this happened to me, like as it happened. It's always like way after the fact. And it's for me so far from my own personal experience, but at the same time, I know that this stuff is pervasive and is going on. Just trying to do my best personally to be kind of one of those people that helps uplift the women in the industry as much as I can.
That's really fantastic. And thank you for it, for sure.
Yeah.
The reason that you don't hear about things is, I mean, do you remember that hashtag of why I didn't report?
No, I don't. Okay. I didn't see that one yet.
So it was kind of around the time of the Kavanaugh situation in the media. Mm-hmm. There was a hashtag trending on Twitter, why I didn't report. And what it was women talking about why they didn't tell anybody when something happened to them. And that's why you don't hear about things when it happens. You hear about it way after the fact.
Right.
Because we as women always have to balance what's going to happen if I say this. Mm-hmm. If I say this out loud, if I let people know that this happened, what's going to happen to me? Are people going to be afraid to invite me to things? Are they going to be, am I going to get shut out of the inner circle of the industry? I mean, and that's something that I've had to come to terms with. I mean, I've always been a fairly outspoken person. It just comes from upbringing. But at the same time, I recognize that I have a level of privilege within this industry, that as an established woman in this industry, I work for myself, so I don't have to worry about getting fired or getting in trouble at work for saying things. I have a bit of a brand that I have to protect, obviously, but I also don't have to worry that I'm going to get shut out completely. And so I've really embraced that and decided to use that to advocate for the women who can't speak up or who are afraid to speak up.
Yeah, and I think that that's incredibly valuable and incredibly powerful. And like I said before, like seeing you speak up was one of the key reasons that I wanted to reach out to you. Aside from your experience and expertise within the industry, just seeing those conversations crop up made me go, I think I want to talk to Jenny at some point. So I am glad that you agreed to come on and talk to me and honestly be honest about what is a really sensitive subject that I've tried to get a few people to kind of go into it, and everybody's kind of stayed for the most part very surface level. So I do think that there is some apprehension to even talking about this topic on the surface, which there
is. Everybody worries that I'm going to say something wrong, or I'm going to get myself in trouble. Right. Myself included.
Both within the company that I work for, or how within Twitter these days, it's almost like if you say one wrong thing, it's like a feeding frenzy. If you get on the bad side of Twitter, a feeding frenzy. And I would say maybe 5 years ago, the feeding frenzy would go and it would be over. But in this day and age, if you get caught in one of those, it could cost you your job, because that's how seriously it is taken. And some people deserve it. Maybe some people don't. I don't know. But yes, this type of a subject is certainly sensitive, and I want to talk about it. while also not getting caught in the feeding frenzy at the same time.
So is there another minute? Because I have a comment on that
sure.
that I really want anybody listening to take to heart.
Yeah.
And that is that people make mistakes.
Sure.
There are some mistakes that can be atoned for and taken back. And there are other mistakes that they should ruin your career.
Yeah.
And really at that point, they're not mistakes. They're just, you probably need professional help. Exactly. But on this topic of that feeding frenzy, never forget that the person on the other end of that is a person.
Yeah.
And try and be fair. There was a situation recently with somebody from the UK who I consider a friend. I mean, he's a friend, and I met his wife, and she's a lovely person, and he did something that was really stupid.
I know what you're talking about, and yes, it was incredibly stupid.
Just frankly insensitive, and then doubled down on it and was stupid about it. And I told him, that this was a dumb thing to do, man. You need to atone for this. You need to figure out what needs to happen next from this. Right. And what I want to emphasize is that person who's my friend is still my friend. He made a mistake, but he's still my friend, and I'm not gonna do anything to try to mess up his career, and I still really respect him as an SEO. And I think that, don't get involved in the poo throwing and the insults. Stand strong and stand to your convictions, but you don't have to character assassinate somebody.
Sure. So that got really, really deep. So
sorry.
No, it's okay. No, that's good. Last two questions. Want to just quickly touch on some actual SEO, since this is an SEO podcast. What are your favorite tactics or strategies? Tactics and strategies are a little different, but what's kind of your favorite thing to apply with your clients these days?
It depends on the client.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've got some kind of tricks that I use pretty consistently. So I primarily work with mid-level to large-size business all the way up to enterprise. And one thing that I definitely try to do with the clients at that level is backlink auditing. So not from the perspective of let's find bad links and disavow them, although there's certainly something to be said for that if the client has had some issues in the past, but more of a what cruft is out there that we can turn to our advantage. So going back and looking at links that they've lost, a lot of times we can reach back out to that publication and say, hey, you did this great interview with the CEO back in 2011, and we noticed that the link that you have on the page is dead. A lot of times we can get things like that fixed and regain a really strong link. Or there can be redirects put into place for old site migrations or campaigns that were never followed up on from an SEO perspective when they ended. So that there's a lot of value that can be taken from just that kind of technical approach of weeding out the cruft and optimizing what you have that you're not taking advantage of.
How do you, especially with that, where like in some cases that might be like that interview example, the link itself is probably from a heavily branded campaign. How do you tie that back to or correlate that with positive organic performance?
Well, that's more of the thought leadership or expertise piece of the puzzle.
Mhm.
Anytime we can emphasize expertise in a topic is going to be helpful on the organic side. When you're talking about clients that large, they don't need a lot of the, kind of authority sort of thing that smaller clients need, because they already have it. They're a household name. They don't need to go out and find links. They're already there. So it's more a question of optimizing what you have and working with the PR team to make sure that anything that they're working on, they're keeping SEO in mind. Things like, don't create a microsite just for this, new product launch, please. Stuff like that. A lot of my time in an enterprise situation is spent just like as an extension of the in-house team, just helping the team get things through and working with dev to, get story points on the next sprint, like all those kinds of things.
Yeah,
Jamie Alberico had a great tweet this morning, or it might have been last night, but it basically just said, if you're pitching I think she said, if you're pitching a big in-house company and you think you have the magic bullet, ask questions and listen, because chances are we already, you'd have to go back and look at her tweet, but it was essentially saying, I think, that, in-house teams have a lot of requirements and restrictions and things that they have to deal with. And just because you think you found the magic bullet doesn't necessarily mean that they can do it. So don't hang your hat on that. You need to come in and be like, well, have you tried this? And if not, why not? And, you learn more about the company and you learn more about their situation before you jump in and say, I have the solution to all your problems.
Yeah, and she was great also in the JavaScript video, which I recently rewatched.
She's brilliant. And she's a great example of somebody who has just burst onto the scene.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
I had never heard of her a year ago. And
she seems like she's brilliant.
She is brilliant. Yeah. That's just it.
She has awesome hair.
She does have awesome hair.
Yeah. But in terms of what you were just saying, I think two things jump out at me. One is, like, I feel like SEO's greatest problem isn't coming up with, as an SEO day to day, it isn't coming up with great ideas and opportunities. It's working to get them implemented. Like,
yes.
Takes, and that's why SEO takes a long time. It wouldn't take such a long time if implementation was like that, but it's not. Sometimes it can take months, and in my case, a few times it's taken years to get things implemented.
100%.
But then the other thing is, like, empathy, which is a weird thing to say, is an important quality to have in an SEO, but like having empathy for the people that you're trying to work through to get things done, especially developers. There's a natural, and I've experienced it myself, there's a natural inclination on both sides from SEO to developer to just, like you said, throw shit at each other.
Yeah.
And just, throw mud, and for me to think that's stupid developer, and the developer to think that's snake oil salesman SEO. Really, like, when you talk, it's important. In some cases, I've been able to develop really, really good relationships with developers. In other cases, like, there was like a brick wall, and that brick wall wasn't coming down. But part of the equation is having empathy for what else they're being asked to do, and knowing your place in terms of where SEO fits into that equation, and trying to work with them to make sure that they can not waste their time, which is important to them. If they're going to be doing something, it better be impactful and not wasting their time. So that's something that I've found.
Absolutely. So here's your tip for like working with a difficult developer.
Yep.
Or development team.
Mm-hmm.
The absolute best thing you can say as an SEO is, well, I'm not the developer. I'm not the expert in this area, but kind of here are the goals that I'm trying to achieve, and here's why. So one idea that I had for how we might do this is to XYZ, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. Absolutely.
that and find out how you can manage to like get out and drink some beers with them.
Absolutely.
Because seriously, like that brings down walls.
Yeah, it absolutely does. So last question, and I ask this to everybody, or at least I try to. So imagine that you're somebody getting into the industry literally this second, this day, this year. What advice would you give to somebody like that?
It depends on what your goals are. If your goal is to do good work, then find some good clients and do good work. If your goal is to become known in the industry, then find good clients and do good work and tell people how you did it.
Yeah.
Share, become part of the community, join the Facebook groups like Dumb SEO Questions and others I can't think of right now, and help. Hop on SEO chat and SEM Rush chat, and so many others, and help and talk shop. Don't be egotistical. Just learn and respect and help. And that's pretty much how we all got where we are today.
I feel like that's just good life advice.
It is. It definitely is.
Respect, learn, help. Yeah, a lot of people could.
And don't bullshit, because we can see it from a mile away.
And so can clients.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a U.S. Search Awards judge, which is a great honor. I love doing it. But just last week, I was going through all the entries for the categories that I've been assigned this year, and I mean, some of them are spectacular, and some of them are smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's easy to see through the crap.
Yep. Well, Jenny, I appreciate you going over time here a little bit and being so awesome and candid and open and honest. So really appreciate your time.
Thanks. It's the only way I know how to be, sometimes to my detriment. So
More power to you.
Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you so much for listening to the Page 2 podcast. If you like this podcast, you can listen and rate it on a number of platforms, including Anchor.fm, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Radio Public, Applecast, Stitcher, Breaker, Castbox, and more. If you wish to support the growth of this podcast, please visit my website at jacobstoops.com/page2podcast or Anchor.fm/page2podcast to make a donation. Would be greatly appreciated. If you're an SEO who would like to be interviewed, I'd love to have you. Simply send me an email at jake.stoops@gmail.com and we'll absolutely set something up. Until next time, happy optimizing.